Hello and welcome to Sleepy Science Story. This is your time to slow down, to let the world outside gently quiet itself while your thoughts drift like dandelion seeds on a soft breeze. Tonight, we're going to settle into the slow, green rhythm of the plant world, the quiet architects of life, the gentle giants who feed the world not with noise or speed, but with stillness, sunlight, and time. I do hope this video isn't so interesting. It keeps you wide awake. But if it does, at least your dreams will be full of photosynthesis, root networks, and the soft hush of leaves turning toward the light. Before we begin, I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Let me know in the comments below, and feel free to leave a gentle like or tap subscribe if you find comfort in these quiet, curious journeys. Thank you for being here. Let's begin somewhere quiet, not with drama or urgency, but with a simple green breath, the kind of breath that doesn't come from lungs or mouths, but from leaves, from mosses nestled in stone, from tree canopies moving gently in the wind, from wild grass that doesn't ask for much and gives more than it gets. There is a stillness to plant life that is easy to miss. It doesn't shout, it doesn't gallop, it doesn't flare like stars or dive like birds. But if you pause, just for a moment, and let your attention soften, you'll begin to feel it. That quiet hum of something alive, something growing, stretching, breathing in its own gentle rhythm. Beneath your feet, a root system maps the ground like a secret language. Roots don't scurry, but they move, slowly, patiently. They wind between stones, they sip from hidden water, they reach for minerals buried deep in the soil's hush. Roots are not just straws or anchors, they are listeners. They detect vibrations, respond to nutrients, form alliances. In every handful of soil there is a story unfolding, told in silence, and the plants listen, responding, with growth that seems still but is never truly stopped. Above, the leaves are catching light, not passively, not lazily, but with purpose. Each leaf is a little solar panel, tuned to the subtle movements of the Sunday. They open their pores, called stomata, to breathe in carbon dioxide and let oxygen drift out into the air. This process, photosynthesis, is one of the most generous things that has ever happened on this planet. Using nothing more than sunlight, air, and water, a plant creates sugar. It stores energy. It becomes food, not just for itself, but for nearly everything else that eats, crawls, walks, swims, or flies. Quietly and without applause, plants feed the world. And yet, we rarely notice. When we talk about food, we often think of meals, menus, recipes, kitchens. But food begins long before the oven. It begins with a seed, a green shoot, a leaf catching light, a root drawing minerals from the deep. The sandwich, the salad, the spoonful of rice, all trace back to the soft, unremarkable moment when a plant grew. It doesn't demand recognition, but it deserves it. Even the air you're breathing now has been touched by plants. They don't just make food, they remake the sky. The oxygen in your lungs, the invisible gift keeping your thoughts soft and your eyelids heavy, is a gift from chlorophyll. From green cells doing quiet chemistry while you rest, while you sleep, while you dream, plants work around the clock, not loudly, but faithfully. And while their movements are slow, their impact is immense. So here we are, at the edge of this story, not with a bang, but with a breath, a green breath. The kind that began long before us, and will continue long after, all around you, even now, in pots, in parks, in cracks between the pavement. Plants are quietly, steadily feeding the world, and they ask for almost nothing in return. If you've ever held a leaf up to the sun, you might have seen the faint pattern of veins beneath its surface, like the gentle imprint of something hidden. That leaf, simple as it seems, is a masterpiece of quiet engineering, and deep within it lives one of the most remarkable pigments ever known to life: chlorophyll. The green behind every blade of grass, every springtime bud, every ivy-covered wall. It is not just a color, it is a light thief. A tiny, efficient energy catcher that has been quietly running the world for over 2 billion years. Chlorophyll doesn't shine or glow, it does the opposite. It absorbs light, mostly in the red and blue parts of the spectrum, and reflects the green. That's why leaves look green to our eyes. Not because green is all they have, but because green is what they give away. All the other colors are being taken in, soaked up, transformed. Imagine that. A leaf turning sunlight into fuel, while looking like it's doing nothing at all. Inside the chloroplast, the cell where chlorophyll lives, a cascade of reactions begins. The light enters and is caught by the chlorophyll molecule, like a whisper cupped in a hand. This energy starts a process that breaks apart water, releasing oxygen into the air and freeing up hydrogen and electrons. At the same time, carbon dioxide slips in through tiny pores on the leaf surface. These two invisible gases meet, guided by sunlight, and rearrange themselves into sugar. Not the kind you stir into tea, but the kind life itself is made from. That sugar doesn't stay in one place. It travels through the plant, feeding roots, buds, stems. It becomes wood, or fruit, or seeds. It may travel into an apple, or sink into the soil through the roots. It may become a feast for an insect or a cow or a person. But it always begins in the same quiet place. A beam of sunlight, caught by chlorophyll, changed into something that can feed a world. What makes chlorophyll even more extraordinary is that it never works alone. There are different types of chlorophyll, tuned to different wavelengths. There are accessory pigments, like carotenoids, that catch other parts of the light spectrum and pass that energy along. Inside a single cell, there's a symphony of cooperation, with each molecule playing its part. And yet to us, it all looks like a quiet green. When you lie beneath a tree and watch the light filtering through the leaves, you are seeing billions of years of careful adaptation. Those leaves are not decorations, they are power plants, they are kitchens, they are shields and sensors. And chlorophyll is their spark. The most powerful energy source on Earth arrives from the sun in waves. And rather than building panels or towers or dams, nature gave us leaves. It gave us chlorophyll. A molecule that doesn't shout, but works with silent, brilliant purpose. Every meal, every breath, every forest began with that green shimmer. The world is brighter because of the sunlight we see. But it is nourished by the sunlight we do not. Long before there were orchards, fields, or gardens, long before there were even animals with mouths to taste sweetness, plants were making sugar. Not as a treat, not as a luxury, but as a quiet invention of survival. In the deep green of their tissues, in the damp and sunlit shallows of ancient Earth, the first photosynthetic organisms began turning sunlight, water, and air into energy they could store. It was a breakthrough so gentle that it hardly seemed like one at all, and yet it became the foundation for almost everything that followed. Sugar is not just a flavor. It is energy in a portable form, a way for a plant to bottle the sun and save it for later. Inside each leaf, light starts a subtle reaction. Water molecules are split, carbon dioxide is pulled in, and a chain of transformations begins. At the end of that chain is glucose, a simple sugar, a molecule that is as ordinary now as it is extraordinary in what it makes possible. Plants weave glucose into long chains called starch for storage or cellulose for structure. They send it to their roots, to their fruits, to their seeds. It becomes the sweetness in a berry, the firmness of a potato, the wood of a tree. Every part of a plant is touched by this sugar, shaped by it, grown from it. Without it, there would be no stems to hold leaves, no roots to search for water, no flowers to open at dawn. And it doesn't stay in the plant. That is the quiet generosity of this invention. When a caterpillar nibbles a leaf, it is eating stored sunlight. When a bird pecks a berry, it is tasting a season of photosynthesis, condensed into a burst of sweetness. When a human cuts a stalk of sugarcane or slices a ripe apple, they are sharing in the same ancient transaction. The energy made by plants becomes the energy of all who feed on them. Life on Earth, in all its variety, loops back to this quiet act of sugar making. Sugar also allows plants to be more than just themselves. They trade it with fungi in the soil, exchanging it for minerals and water. They send it to growing tips and healing wounds. They use it to lure pollinators with nectar, offering a sip of sweetness in exchange for a visit. Each droplet of honey in a flower is a thread in a web of exchanges that reaches far beyond the plant itself. The sweetness we taste is just one small sign of a vast invisible economy powered by light. To think about this is to feel a certain awe at the softness of it all. No roaring furnaces, no clattering gears. Just sunlight, leaves, and a handful of simple molecules rearranged with patience. In the quiet green factories of plants, sugar is born every second. Without announcements, without pause, it flows outward, feeding the roots of forests, the wings of bees, and the hearts of people. It is the soft pulse of life itself, hidden inside a leaf. Beneath the surface of the soil, far from sunlight and sound, a quiet architecture is always unfolding. Roots spread in every direction, not randomly, but with intention, with slow awareness, as if they are feeling their way through the earth's hidden spaces. While we walk above, unaware of the intricate world just below our shoes, roots are hard at work. Not rushing, not forcing, but gently growing, wrapping themselves around stones, finding paths through dense soil, and tapping into ancient veins of moisture. They are not just anchors, they are architects, sculpting a living web that supports the entire plant and often much more. Each root begins with a tip so small it can move between grains of sand. It is protected by a cap of cells that sense gravity and touch. As it pushes forward, the root explores. When it finds what it needs, it sends signals back. Not through words, of course, but through changes in pressure, in chemicals, in subtle shifts that ripple through the plant like messages passed by touch. Some roots grow downward, some out to the sides. Some form thick taproots that drive deep into the earth, while others form fibrous networks close to the surface. Each system is unique, shaped by soil, water, and the quiet needs of the plant itself. Roots also build relationships. In the darkness, they form partnerships with fungi, exchanging sugar made by the leaves for minerals gathered by the fungal threads. These threads are so fine they can slip into spaces roots cannot reach. Together, they make the plant stronger, more resilient. It is an underground handshake, sealed without eyes or ears, older than most of the creatures walking above. Some roots even connect to the roots of other plants, forming a kind of community where nutrients and warnings can travel from one tree to another. This is not myth. It is real, and it is happening even in the quietest corners of a forest. But roots do not only seek what they need, they also make things. They release enzymes and acids that shape the soil around them, changing its chemistry to suit the plant's needs. They secrete compounds that attract helpful microbes and discourage harmful ones. And through it all, they hold the earth together. Without them, rain would wash the soil away and wind would scatter the ground like dust. Roots are the hands of the plant, gently holding on. If you could listen to the soil, really listen, you would hear the soft, steady sound of roots growing, not a sound made with vibration, but with movement and intention. They do not race, because they do not need to. They persist, they adjust, and slowly they create the foundation for everything above. So the next time you walk on grass or sit beneath a tree, remember the quiet world beneath you, the one where roots build without walls, communicate without words, and give more than they take. It is a world of patience, and it never truly sleeps. In the stillness of the soil, hidden from sunlight and mostly unnoticed by the eyes of the world, there is a quiet partnership that has shaped life on Earth for hundreds of millions of years. It exists beneath forests, meadows, mountains, and even beneath our gardens and lawns. This is not the story of a single plant or a lone root, but of a collaboration so ancient and so essential that without it, the green world above would likely not exist as we know it. It is the story of fungi and roots working together in patient, silent harmony. Long before trees reached for the sky or flowers swayed in the breeze, fungi were already threading their way through the earth. They spread not as towering mushrooms, but as thin, delicate filaments called hyphae. These strands are finer than the smallest root hairs and can stretch for miles, crisscrossing soil in a vast and silent network. When plants began to appear, they found these fungi waiting. And over time, the two formed an alliance. The fungi would help the plants gather minerals like phosphorus and nitrogen, slipping into the tightest spaces in the soil. In return, the plants would share the sugars they made from sunlight. Neither could do the other's job. Together, they thrived. This partnership is called mycorrhiza, a word that sounds like a whisper through leaves. It means fungus root, a joining of two beings into one shared purpose. The fungi wrap themselves around the plant roots or even enter their cells, forming gentle structures that allow the exchange of nutrients. No battle, no harm, just quiet cooperation. And in return, the plant grows stronger. It can survive in poor soil. It can resist disease. It can reach farther than it ever could alone. Beneath forests, this network becomes even more astonishing. Trees of different kinds can become connected through shared fungal partners. A tall oak might share with a nearby maple, sending extra nutrients where they are needed. A young sapling in the shade may be fed by older trees it has never touched. This is not myth or metaphor. It is science, discovered by careful measurements and quiet observation. The fungal network becomes a communication system, a lifeline, a memory that lives in the soil. Some scientists have called it the wood wide web, and while that phrase is playful, the idea behind it is powerful. The forest is not a collection of individuals. It is a community, woven together by threads too fine to see, but too important to ignore. The fungi are not silent servants, nor are the plants helpless clients. They are partners. Each gives, each receives, and together they build something far greater than either could build alone. If you ever walk through a forest and feel something deeper than the surface, something connected and calm, it may be this partnership you're sensing. A slow, invisible friendship between roots and fungi, holding the world together from below. In that quiet place where sun never shines, life continues to grow in soft, interconnected wonder. At first glance, leaves might appear to be lazy things. They flutter in the breeze, they bask in the sun, they sway without a clear sense of urgency. But if you could look more closely, you would see that each leaf is a masterpiece of quiet productivity. Every movement, every shimmer of light across its surface is part of a carefully balanced act of survival. Leaves may look gentle and idle, but behind their calm appearance is a world of tireless work. A leaf is not just a flat green decoration. It is a laboratory. It is a kitchen. It is a living solar panel. Inside, thousands of cells are constantly at work, capturing sunlight and turning it into usable energy. Each cell contains chloroplasts, and inside those chloroplasts is the chlorophyll we've already talked about. These tiny green machines collect light and begin the long process of photosynthesis, which not only feeds the plant itself, but contributes to the oxygen we breathe and the food we eat. The leaf is a giver in every sense, doing its work without noise, without expectation. But even beyond photosynthesis, the leaf is a careful manager. It must control its water, its temperature, and its gas exchange. Along its surface are countless microscopic pores called stomata. These are like little mouths that open and close depending on the plant's needs. Through them, the leaf draws in carbon dioxide and releases oxygen. But every time these pores open, a little water escapes. It is a delicate dance between breathing and drying out. So the leaf listens closely to the air, to the humidity, to the heat of the day, adjusting its rhythm with more care than we can see. And then there is movement. The fluttering you see in a breeze is not always just wind at play. For some plants, the leaf moves intentionally, tilting itself toward better light, or curling slightly when the sun grows too hot. Some leaves are even sensitive to touch, folding when brushed or when night falls. It is a language we do not speak, a choreography of survival played out in slow time. Even their shape tells a story. A broad leaf gathers more light but loses more water. A thin needle holds onto its moisture but lets in less sunday. Some leaves are thick and waxy to endure dry climates. Others are feathery and light to survive in shade. Evolution has sculpted each form for the environment it meets, and none of it is random. Every curve and color and vein is the result of countless years of patient refinement. So, when you see a leaf resting on a branch, try to imagine all the work it's doing, the sun it is catching, the air it is tasting, the water it is managing. It may not hum or tick or chime, but it is a clock of its own, keeping time with the light. In the hush of a quiet afternoon, a leaf may seem still, but it is never truly idle. It is simply working in the way nature so often does, gently, steadily, and with quiet purpose. If you could follow a single breath of air from your mouth all the way back to its beginnings, you would eventually find yourself standing beneath a tree or beside a patch of moss or crouched next to a blade of grass. Somewhere, somehow, that bit of air passed through a leaf. It lingered in the green heart of a plant and was changed. The carbon inside it was taken in, rearranged, and turned into something else. This is the beginning of one of the quietest, most important journeys on Earth. It is the story of carbon, moving in circles, never lost, only borrowed. Every living thing contains carbon. It is the foundation of our bodies, our bones, our breath. But carbon does not stay in one place. It moves, slowly and invisibly, through the air, through water, through the bodies of plants and animals. When a plant performs photosynthesis, it takes in carbon dioxide from the air and uses it to build sugars. Those sugars become stems, leaves, roots, and fruit. So every time we eat a carrot or a grain of rice or even sip a cup of tea, we are tasting the work of carbon that passed through a plant first. But it does not stop there. When a deer eats a leaf, the carbon inside that leaf moves into the deer. When the deer breathes or runs or simply exists, some of that carbon is released back into the world. It may return to the air as carbon dioxide, or it may sink into the soil when a plant sheds its leaves. In time, it may become part of a mushroom, a worm, or another plant entirely. The carbon goes on, circling in silence. Even in death, the loop continues. A fallen tree slowly decomposes, releasing carbon into the soil and air. A rotting apple enriches the earth beneath it, and that richness is taken up by the roots of another plant. The process is not loud or sudden. It takes days, seasons, years, but the rhythm never breaks. The loop never closes fully, because it is always in motion. There is no true end, only a constant passing on. This great carbon cycle is one of the reasons life on Earth can be so resilient. Instead of needing something new every time, life reuses what it already has. A molecule of carbon in your breath tonight may one day be part of a pine cone, or a snowflake, or the laughter of someone you have not yet met. The story is long, but it is made of small steps. And all of it begins with the plants. Without their quiet work, there would be no entry point for carbon into the living world. They are the gatekeepers, the first link in a chain that stretches through every field and forest. Every time a leaf reaches for the sun, it is also reaching for the future, gently pulling carbon into the dance of life once more. The loop goes on, steady and unseen, just like the breath that brought you here. There is something ancient and comforting about a tree. The way it stands, the way it leans into the wind without worry, the way it grows with a patience that we rarely match. Trees do not chase anything. They do not wander, and yet they feed themselves in a way that is both elegant and profound. Without ever lifting a foot, they gather all they need from air, water, and light. They do not ask for help, but they give freely. Fruit, shade, oxygen, shelter. But before they give, they first must feed themselves. And they do it in silence. A tree begins, always, as a seed. Inside that seed is a set of instructions, but also a spark. When the seed finds the right place, with soil that holds moisture and enough warmth from the sun, it begins to unfold. First a root, then a shoot. The shoot reaches upward, the root downward, and the tiny tree begins its life by splitting the world in two directions. It is already feeding itself. It is already growing. Once the first leaves appear, the tree begins the slow and steady process of photosynthesis. With the light of the sun, carbon dioxide from the air, and water from the soil, it starts to make sugars. Not just enough to survive, but enough to build. These sugars become the raw materials for bark, branches, leaves, and eventually even flowers and fruit. This is the quiet construction site of a living skyscraper. No machines, no scaffolding, just cells dividing in rhythm with the seasons. The tree pulls water through its roots and up its trunk, a journey that can stretch over 100 feet in some species. It is drawn upward not by pumps or pressure, but by evaporation from the leaves. As water escapes through tiny pores in the leaves, more is pulled upward behind it. This column of water is pulled gently, steadily, in one continuous stream, like a thread woven from the earth to the sky. And while it grows taller, the tree does not forget below. Its roots continue to deepen and spread, anchoring it through storms, gathering nutrients, and forming connections with fungi that help it reach even farther. All the while, the sugars made in the leaves travel downward as well, feeding the roots, supporting the bark, helping the whole tree stay alive through droughts and winters. There is no feast, no fire, just light turned into wood, sugar turned into strength, all by a plant that does not move, does not seek, but simply stands. A tree feeds itself with patience, and it grows because it must, not because it is in a hurry. It stretches toward the sun in slow-motion wonder, adding a few inches each year. And in doing so, it becomes something more than just a plant. It becomes a presence, a witness to time, a reminder that feeding the world does not have to be loud. Sometimes it only needs to be steady. There was a time, long before cities, long before writing, when every meal was a question. People wandered, searched, followed herds, or waited for berries to ripen. They watched the skies and listened to the ground, unsure where their next food would come from. But then something changed. It didn't happen all at once, and it didn't happen everywhere. In pockets of the world, scattered across river valleys and forest edges, people began to look at plants differently, not just as things to gather or eat in passing, but as partners. The wild grasses they once walked past were now being watched. Their seeds were saved, their patterns studied, and then quietly, farming began. It started small. A few seeds pressed into soft earth, a patch of ground cleared and protected, a season of waiting. People learned to water when the rain did not come, to remove the plants that competed, to save the seeds from the strongest, the tallest, the tastiest. Over time, those plants changed. They grew plumper, less bitter, easier to harvest. They gave more and asked for less, and the people changed too. They stayed in one place. They built homes, stored food, raised families with a little more certainty. A friendship had formed, quiet and slow, between humans and plants. Among the first of these new companions were wheat, barley, rice, and millet. These weren't glamorous crops, just humble grasses really, but they had something special. Their seeds were rich in energy, easy to dry, and easy to store. They could survive the months between harvests and become the beginning of the next planting season. Slowly, gently, these grains became the backbone of entire civilizations. But farming was not just about planting, it was about noticing. When a plant grew better in one spot than another, when a pest began to appear, when the rains were late or early, it was a relationship built on attention, a daily conversation without words. And even though plants do not speak, they answer. They answer with wilted leaves or stronger stems, with earlier blooms or taller shoots. The more people paid attention, the more they understood. The bond deepened. As people moved, they brought their plants with them, across mountains, along rivers, over oceans. And as plants traveled, they changed again. Corn in the Americas began as a wild grass too small to feed a family. But with time and care, it grew into towering stalks, bearing golden kernels. Bananas, yams, potatoes, beans, each one shaped by the quiet choices of those who nurtured them. This partnership is still ongoing. Every time someone plants a seed, waits for it to sprout, waters it, weeds around it, and finally harvests what it gives, they are participating in an ancient agreement. A quiet trust that began thousands of years ago, with the simple act of staying put and giving a plant a place to grow. Farming is not only a method, it is a shared story between species. And it all began when someone looked at a plant and thought, maybe we could grow together. Inside every seed is a kind of stillness. It is not the stillness of emptiness or of sleep, but of quiet potential. Each seed holds a blueprint, a memory, and a waiting breath. It carries instructions not just for a plant, but for a life that has not yet begun. You can hold 100 seeds in your palm and they will feel light, almost weightless, but the truth is, they are heavier than they seem. Each one contains the history of its species and the quiet promise of a future that is ready to unfold the moment conditions are right. A seed does not rush. It does not open too early or too late. It listens. It waits for signals in the soil, for the warmth of the sun, for the pull of moisture against its skin. It waits for the soft suggestion that the world outside is ready for it. And when that moment arrives, it does not burst open with drama. It simply begins. A small root reaches downward, anchoring itself in the dark. A shoot curves upward, toward whatever light it can find. It is a gesture so small that it would be easy to miss, but that movement is everything. The shell of a seed is more than a covering. It is a time capsule. It protects the embryo inside during cold, during drought, during years that may pass without invitation. Some seeds wait decades. Some wait centuries. In deserts, seeds have been found that outlived the generation who scattered them. They rest in silence, not dying, not growing, but simply holding on to the possibility of life. And inside that shell, remarkable things are organized. A cotyledon to provide early food, a tiny shoot and root, preformed and ready to act. All designed with a kind of elegant simplicity that can unfold into a towering tree or a delicate vine. The range of what seeds become is vast, but the beginning is always the same. Small, unassuming and patient. Seeds do not choose where they land. They are scattered by wind, by water, by animals, by people. Some drift across oceans. Some fall a few inches from their parent, but wherever they arrive, they begin the same process. They listen, they wait, and if the world around them feels safe, they grow. Humans have always been drawn to seeds. We save them, we plant them, we share them. A single seed can feed a village, start a forest, or carry a plant across continents. We tuck them into packets, into pockets, into fields and flower beds, and each time we do, we are participating in that same quiet act of trust, that something so small can one day become something more. So the next time you see a seed, think of the stillness it holds, the blueprint it carries, the future it quietly waits to become. It is not a small thing at all. It is a sleeping miracle, and it only needs a little time to wake. Grass does not often ask to be noticed. It does not bloom with bright colors or rise above the canopy like a tree. It stays low, keeps to the background, and carpets the world with quiet consistency. But beneath that simple surface is a plant that has changed the shape of the earth. Not with drama or spectacle, but with steady, invisible work. Grass is one of the most widespread and important families of plants on the planet, and it plays a role so vital that we sometimes forget it is even there. Imagine a meadow at dawn. Mist still clings to the blades, the air is cool, and everything feels soft. That grass, shining with dew, is not just scenery. It is food. It is shelter. It is a protector of the soil. Each blade is a tiny green engine, catching sunlight, feeding roots, growing back again and again, no matter how many times it is cut or grazed. Grass is persistence made visible. Its structure is simple. Long leaves that grow from the base, able to regrow after damage, hollow stems that bend without breaking, roots that hold tight to the soil, keeping it from being swept away by wind or rain. In this quiet structural efficiency lies its strength. Grass covers more of the planet's land surface than any other type of plant. It fills plains, savannas, pastures, and prairies. It grows between cracks in sidewalks and across fields that stretch to the horizon. But grass is not just everywhere. It is also central to the way life works. Many of the animals we rely on for food survive on grass. Cows, sheep, goats, horses, and countless wild creatures graze their days away, turning the sunlight stored in leaves into movement, warmth, and nourishment. Through them, grass becomes milk, wool, muscle, breath. The energy moves upward into other lives, including our own. Grass also forms the foundation of much of the world's agriculture. Corn, rice, wheat, barley, oats, and millet are all grasses, shaped by human hands over thousands of years. These are not just crops, they are grasses with stories, each one beginning as a wild plant, later invited into fields and nurtured into abundance. We build our diets around them, our economies, our traditions, and still, most of the time, we hardly look down. Even in cities, grass finds a way to exist. Lawns and parks, roadside edges, schoolyards and backyards. It may be trimmed and tamed, but it is still doing its work, holding the soil, soaking up carbon, cooling the air, offering a place to sit, to lie down, to walk barefoot in the late afternoon Sunday. Grass is not loud, it is not showy, but it endures, it spreads, it waits through winter and rises with the spring. It gives without asking and continues to grow even when forgotten. In the quiet world of plants, grass might be the most humble of all, and yet, without it, so much of what we depend on would simply disappear. It is the green thread that holds countless ecosystems together, soft, steady, and always there. Corn is everywhere. It grows in golden rows across continents, towers over fields in summer heat, and fills trucks, silos, and store shelves in ways that might surprise you. But behind this familiar plant is a story so strange it almost feels made up, because corn as we know it today should not exist at all. It is not a wild plant anymore. It does not grow on its own, and it cannot spread without help. Corn is a product of partnership, of patience, and of thousands of years of quiet, careful tending by human hands. Its ancestor was a wild grass called teosinte. At first glance, teosinte looks nothing like modern corn. Its ears are tiny, just a few hard seeds tucked inside a tough casing. But someone, thousands of years ago in what is now southern Mexico, saw something in that plant. Maybe one had slightly larger seeds. Maybe one had a softer shell. Over generations, people began saving seeds from the plants they liked best. They planted them, watched them grow, and saved the best again. Slowly, gently, the plant began to change. It was not an overnight transformation. It took centuries for corn to become what it is now. The kernels grew bigger, sweeter, easier to harvest. The husks formed tightly around the cob, protecting the seeds, but also making it impossible for the plant to spread its seeds without help. Corn became completely dependent on people, and people in return came to depend on corn. Today, corn feeds billions. It is eaten directly, ground into flour, turned into syrup, popped into snacks, and cooked into countless dishes. It feeds livestock that become meat and dairy. It fills fuel tanks and appears in packaging. It is in cereal, ketchup, glue, crayons, and even batteries. And yet, all of it comes from a grass that once barely stood a few feet tall. Cornfields are easy to overlook. From a distance, they look like green walls under the sky, still and orderly. But inside each stalk, photosynthesis is turning light into sugar. Water is rising from the roots, and energy is being packed into each developing kernel. When the ears mature, they hang heavy with the effort of months of sun and soil, and when they are harvested, they carry not just calories, but history. What makes corn so fascinating is how closely its life is tied to ours. It cannot exist without humans, and in many places, people cannot imagine life without corn. This mutual dependence has shaped landscapes and diets, economies and cultures. It is not just a crop. It is a story written in green rows and golden kernels, one that began with a wild grass and continues to unfold today. If you ever hold an ear of corn in your hands, try to feel the time inside it. The long line of choices that made it possible. The patience of those early farmers. The quiet cooperation between seed and hand. Corn is more than food. It is a plant that trusted us to help it grow. And we did. Tucked inside every green leaf are tiny compartments that carry out one of the most extraordinary processes on Earth. These compartments are so small that you cannot see them without a microscope, but their work touches every breath you take and every bite of food you eat. They are called chloroplasts, and inside them lives a quiet power plant, not one made of wires or steam, but of sunlight and living chemistry. This is the place where light becomes life. A chloroplast is shaped like a flattened disc, almost like a tiny green pancake. Inside, it holds stacks of structures called thylakoids, which look a little like coins piled in a roll. These are the places where light is caught and turned into energy. When sunlight hits a leaf, it is not just warming the surface, it is entering the chloroplast and beginning a transformation. Light particles are absorbed by chlorophyll, the pigment that gives plants their green color. This pigment is not just for show, it is the gateway through which light enters the story. When chlorophyll absorbs sunlight, it becomes energized. That energy is passed along a chain of molecules like a spark traveling through a line of kindling. The energy is used to split water molecules that the plant has pulled up from its roots. This releases oxygen, which drifts out of the leaf and into the air. The plant does not need the oxygen. That part is for the rest of us. What it keeps are the hydrogen atoms and the energetic electrons that will be used to build sugar. At the same time, carbon dioxide from the air enters the leaf through tiny pores. The plant combines this carbon with the hydrogen from water, using the energy from sunlight to bind it all together into glucose. This sugar becomes fuel. It is not burned all at once like firewood, but used slowly, piece by piece, to grow and repair and bloom. What is remarkable about the chloroplast is not just that it performs this transformation, but that it does it constantly, quietly, and without needing to move. It does not chase the sunday. It waits for the light to come, and when it does, it gets to work. Over the course of a single day, a single leaf might produce enough oxygen to support a small animal. Multiply that by every leaf on every plant, and you begin to understand the scale of this invisible power. Chloroplasts are thought to have started as free-living bacteria long ago, before plants even existed. At some point, they were taken in by a larger cell and became part of it. Not as prisoners, but as partners. That partnership changed the world. It made possible all green life, and everything that depends on green life, which is nearly everything. So next time you see a tree or a fern or a humble weed by the roadside, remember what is happening in every one of its leaves. Inside each chloroplast, light is being turned into sugar, water is being split, air is being changed, and all of it is happening so gently that you would never know unless you pause to wonder. As daylight fades and the sky shifts towards soft shades of blue and silver, many living things begin to settle. Birds find their branches, bees return to their hives, even people begin to slow their pace. And while plants may not tuck themselves in or close their eyes, they too respond to the changing light. Plants do not sleep in the way animals do, but night brings a change in their rhythm. It brings a kind of stillness, a softer hum of activity, a slower unfolding of their quiet work. Photosynthesis depends on light, and so when the sun slips away, the leaves stop capturing energy. But this does not mean the plant becomes inactive. Far from it. As the light fades, the plant shifts to a new phase of work. Sugars that were made during the day begin to move. Some are stored, some are sent to the roots, some are used for repair. The plant takes the energy it gathered from the sun and begins to distribute it. This work is less visible but no less important. At night, some plants close their leaves. This movement, known as nyctinasti, is not a sign of sleep, but a response to darkness. The leaves fold or droop, sometimes to protect themselves from cooling temperatures, or to reduce water loss, or perhaps to discourage nighttime insects. These movements are subtle, and they happen slowly, like a deep breath being drawn and held. If you sat beside a pea plant at dusk, you might see its leaflets gently folding inward, as if it were curling up in thought. Underground, the roots continue their search. They draw in water and nutrients, using the energy that was made earlier. Some cells divide, some tissues grow. There is less urgency now, but not less purpose. Nighttime is a chance for the plant to rest from the intensity of the sun, to repair damage from wind or insects, to prepare for the light that will return with the morning. Plants also follow a kind of internal clock. Even without sunlight, they can keep time. This circadian rhythm helps them know when to open their leaves, when to produce certain chemicals, when to grow, and when to pause. It is a rhythm set by the turning of the earth, and it has guided plants for longer than humans have existed. They do not need watches or alarms. They simply respond, day after day, to the slow music of time. Some plants even bloom at night, releasing fragrances to attract moths or bats. Others shift their focus inward, strengthening their stems or preparing seeds. Every species has its own version of the nighttime lullaby, so while we think of night as a time when nothing grows, the truth is more gentle. Plants do not stop, they simply shift. They adjust their breath, slow their pace, and continue their quiet work beneath the stars. In the hush of night, the green world hums with the soft sound of life continuing, not loudly, but faithfully, and always in tune with the turning of the sky. Some plants climb, not with arms or legs, but with something far quieter. They climb with patience, with flexibility, and with a kind of cleverness that does not need to move fast to be effective. Among them are the beans. Beans do not grow tall by becoming thick or rigid. They do not build strong trunks to rise above the grasses or reach the sunlight. Instead, they take another path. They find support in what is already there. They climb by holding on. A bean plant begins like many others, pushing a small green shoot from the soil, reaching up with its first leaves. But then it does something different. Rather than spreading wide or sinking low, it sends out a long, slender tendril. This tendril curls through the air, circling slowly, searching. It moves in loops so gradual that you would never notice if you only glanced. But if you watched it over hours or days, you would see it reaching. It is looking for something to hold. When it finds a nearby stick, stalk, or fence, it touches it and begins to wrap. The curling motion is gentle but firm. Over time, the tendril tightens, and the plant begins to climb. It does not pull itself up like a vine might, nor does it anchor with hooks or claws. It rises by wrapping, spiraling, and using the strength of others. With each new loop, it gains height, always turning toward the light. This method is surprisingly efficient. Rather than putting all its energy into building thick stems, the bean focuses on reaching and producing. It grows leaves to catch the sun, flowers to invite pollinators, and pods that eventually swell with seeds. These seeds carry the next generation, each one holding the quiet memory of how to climb. Climbing plants are not taking shortcuts, they are simply using what is available. They rely on the wind to bring them hints of nearby support, and when they find it, they adapt. If nothing is there, they may trail along the ground, waiting for something or someone to guide them upward. But when given the chance, they always rise. In a way, the bean's method of climbing is a lesson in trust. It does not try to grow tall on its own. It grows in cooperation with its surroundings. It pays attention. It adjusts. And through this, it finds success in places where other plants might fail. In gardens and on farms, beans grow along trellises and poles, creating green walls that sway in the breeze. But the same behavior can be seen in the wild, where they climb over rocks, shrubs, or fallen logs. Each twist and turn is a quiet record of the plant's journey, a slow dance between need and opportunity. So, if you ever see a bean plant coiling its way up a stick or weaving gently through a fence, remember that this is not just growth. It is strategy. It is softness meeting structure. It is a plant using its shape not to stand alone but to grow with grace, by holding on. In some corners of the world, rice does not grow in dry rows or dusty fields. It grows in water. It grows in paddies that shimmer like mirrors under the sky, where young green shoots sway gently above the surface and their roots rest in calm, shallow pools. These watery fields are not accidents of nature. They are carefully made, shaped by hand and guided by tradition. They are floating fields, born from quiet ingenuity and shaped by a deep understanding of both plant and place. The rice plant is well suited to this partnership. It does not mind wet feet. In fact, it thrives in them. Its roots can breathe in flooded soil, and its stems grow quickly enough to stay ahead of rising water. As it grows, it pulls nutrients from the mud below and stretches toward the sun above. The flooded field helps protect it from pests, keeps the soil cool, and softens the land so that weeds struggle to take hold. What might seem like a challenge to other plants becomes an advantage to rice. It grows not in spite of the water, but because of it. To the eye, a rice paddy looks peaceful, wide, open, still. But beneath that stillness is a world in motion. Fish swim between the stems. Insects hover at the surface. Birds come and go. The water carries nutrients. It reflects the sky, keeping the plants warm in the day and cooler at night. Even the mud plays its part, holding minerals close to the roots, releasing them slowly as the season unfolds. These flooded fields are shaped by people, often by hand, often by families who have tended the same plots for generations. Small dikes are built to guide the water. Channels are opened or closed to control the flow. The timing of planting and draining is measured not just in days but in decades of tradition. There is science here, and history, and care. It is not loud work. It is thoughtful, rhythmic, part of a cycle that stretches through time like the rows of green stretching across the water. When the rice matures, the water is drained and the plants are harvested by hand or by simple tools. The grains are gathered, dried, and stored. Each handful holds the memory of sunlight on water, of muddy footprints in the morning, of the still patience that farming asks for and rice returns. What was once a small seed in a flooded field becomes a meal shared across tables all over the world. Rice paddies are places of quiet balance. They are where land and water meet, where people and plants work side by side. They do not shout their importance, but they feed billions. In every spoonful of rice, there is a story of warmth, of effort, and of a plant that learned to grow by floating gently above the ground. It is one of the world's most generous plants, rooted in water, rising in silence, and filling bowls with life. If you peel a banana and take a bite, you are tasting something that once came from a seed, but not in the way most fruits do. Bananas, at least the ones most of us know, no longer grow from seeds. They are not planted the usual way. They do not sprout from soil as a single shoot from a hidden seedling. Instead, they come from cuttings. They are grown by division, by hand, by memory. Modern bananas are quiet copies of one another. Every plant, from the towering stalk to the curved yellow fruit, is a clone of the one before it. Long ago, wild bananas were filled with seeds. Hard, round, unchewable seeds, tucked tightly inside a pulpy shell. The fruit was not the smooth, sweet snack we know today. It was tough and uneven, more challenge than treat. But over generations, people began to notice some plants that had fewer seeds or softer fruit. These were favored, nurtured, and shared. Slowly, the bananas began to change. The seeds faded, the sweetness deepened, the shape smoothed into that familiar crescent. What remained was a fruit without its original instructions. Without seeds, a banana cannot reproduce on its own. It needs help. Farmers cut shoots from the base of an existing plant and replant them elsewhere. These shoots grow into full banana plants, which will one day bear the same fruit, with the same shape, same taste, same color. It is a cycle that depends on care. It is not wild anymore. It is cultivated, preserved, passed down. Each banana plant grows tall and fast. Though it looks like a tree, it is really a giant herb. Its trunk is not made of wood but of tightly layered leaves. These leaves unfurl in spirals, reaching skyward, catching light and water, drawing up energy from the soil. In the center, a flower stalk pushes upward. From that stalk come clusters of fruit, each banana curled like a quiet smile. They grow in rows, heavy with promise, hanging until the time is right to harvest. And then, the plant is done. A banana plant produces fruit only once. After that, its work is finished, and it is cut back. But it is not truly gone. New shoots are already growing nearby, ready to begin again. In this way, bananas form a kind of living relay. One plant rises, bears fruit, passes the torch, and steps aside. The next continues, all from the same original source. When you eat a banana, you are part of this long, careful story. You are tasting something shaped by time, carried by hands, and grown with a kind of quiet devotion. It is not a fruit born wild. It is a fruit made, by partnership, kept alive through rhythm and repetition. A soft yellow echo of a plant that gave up its seeds so it could become something else entirely. Something shared, sweet, and wonderfully strange. In the quiet heat of the desert, where the air is dry and the soil is cracked, you might not expect to find much life. The sun rises early and stays high, and the wind moves like breath held too long. But even here, in this landscape of extremes, something green endures. The cactus, with its thick skin and spiny silhouette, is more than a survivor. It is a master of patience, a slow-moving reservoir of life, and a plant that feeds not just bodies, but entire ecosystems with its careful way of being. The cactus does not rush. It does not waste. Every part of it is designed to keep water in and heat out. Its surface is often smooth and waxy, like stone polished by time. This outer layer helps seal in the moisture it gathers during brief rains, which may come only a few times a year. Instead of wide leaves that lose water quickly, the cactus has spines. These spines are not just defenses against curious animals. They provide shade, reducing the temperature of the cactus's surface. They also help break the wind, protecting the plant from the drying force of constant motion. Beneath the surface, the roots of a cactus are shallow but wide. They spread out like a web, just below the soil, ready to catch every drop of water the desert offers. When rain falls, even if only for a few minutes, the cactus is ready. It draws in water quickly, storing it in thick stems that swell like bottles being filled. Some cacti can hold gallons of water in their tissues, a quiet reservoir for the long, dry months ahead. But the cactus does not just store water, it creates food with extraordinary care. During the day, the desert sun is too intense for safe gas exchange, so the cactus keeps its pores closed. At night, when the air cools and darkness brings a kind of calm, it opens tiny holes in its skin to take in carbon dioxide. This gas is stored until morning, when sunlight returns. Then, photosynthesis begins. It is a system that prioritizes survival, adapted to live not quickly but wisely. Many cacti also bloom. Their flowers, often sudden and bright, appear when the conditions are just right. These blossoms attract pollinators like bats, bees, or moths, offering nectar in exchange for a visit. In time, the flowers become fruit. Sweet, water-rich fruit that nourishes desert creatures and sometimes people too. Prickly pear, saguaro, dragon fruit, all gifts from a plant that asks for so little and gives with such generosity. The cactus is not loud in its resilience. It does not brag. It endures by being efficient, by knowing its limits, and by making the most of every opportunity. In a world where so many things race forward, the cactus shows us the beauty of staying still, of storing energy, of waiting for the right moment. It survives not in spite of the desert, but in harmony with it, a quiet lesson in balance and strength. Not all plants wait politely for what they need. Some go looking for it. They do not walk or run or chase, but they trap and trick and tempt. In the green world of photosynthesis and patience, there is a small group of plants that have chosen a different path. These are the carnivorous plants. Strange, elegant, and a little mischievous, they have learned to supplement their diet in ways that seem more like science fiction than gardening. Take the Venus flytrap. Its leaves are shaped like little jaws, lined with fine hairs and edged with tiny spines. When an insect brushes those hairs not once, but twice in quick succession, the trap snaps shut. It does not close with violence or speed like a snapping mouth, but with a kind of careful certainty. The insect is held. The trap slowly tightens. Digestive fluids are released. Over the next few days, the plant extracts what it needs from the visitor, then opens, again, ready for the next chance encounter. Then there are the sundews. Their leaves are covered in delicate, glistening droplets that look like morning dew. But these droplets are sticky. When a fly lands, drawn by the sparkle, it becomes trapped. The leaf curls in slowly, wrapping the prey in a slow-motion embrace. Like the fly trap, the sundew does not need meat in the way animals do. It uses the nutrients, especially nitrogen, to survive in soil where other plants might fail. This is not greed, it is adaptation. Pitcher plants take a different approach. Their leaves are shaped like tall cups, often filled with rainwater and digestive enzymes. The rim of the pitcher is slippery, sometimes even laced with sweet nectar. Insects climb in and slide down, unable to escape the smooth walls. Once inside, they drown, and the plant slowly digests them. Some pitchers are large enough to trap not just bugs but frogs, and occasionally even small rodents. Yet, like all carnivorous plants, they do not do this to harm. They do it to survive. These plants usually grow in poor, boggy soils where nitrogen and other nutrients are scarce. They turn to insects not because they crave them, but because their roots cannot get what they need from the ground. It is a clever response to a difficult situation. They still use sunlight to make sugar, They still photosynthesize, but the extra nutrients help them grow stronger, flower more brightly, and endure longer. Carnivorous plants remind us that nature is full of surprises. They are not monsters, they are not mistakes, they are simply plants that have found a different way. A way that involves movement, scent, texture, and timing. A way that turns the act of feeding into something almost theatrical. They wait quietly, then act with precision. If you ever see one in the wild or in a terrarium, take a moment to notice how still it is, how delicate, how strange. It may not move much, it may not seem alive at all, but beneath the surface, it is listening, watching, and ready. Plants do not have mouths, they do not have ears, they do not whisper or shout in any way that we would recognize, and yet they speak. They send messages, feel changes, and respond to the world around them with a quiet language all their own. It is not made of words or sounds. It is a language of chemicals and electricity, of movement and memory, of scent and signal. And though we cannot hear it in the usual sense, it is happening all around us, all the time. When a leaf is damaged by an insect, it does not simply accept its fate. It responds. Within seconds, it begins to release a series of chemical signals. These signals move through the plant, traveling from cell to cell, carried along a chain of tiny reactions. The nearby leaves pick up the message and begin to prepare their defenses. Some grow tougher. Some begin to produce compounds that taste bitter or even toxic to the attacker. The insect may think it has found an easy meal, but the plant is already defending itself. Sometimes, the message goes farther. The chemicals released into the air are picked up by neighboring plants, who respond as if they too had been bitten. It is not panic, it is communication. One tree warns another. A field of grass responds together. There is no need for speech when the wind can carry your message. Plants also use electricity. Not in the way wires do, but in small pulses of energy that travel through their tissues. These signals move slower than those in animals, but they still carry information. A sudden touch, a shift in light, a change in temperature, all of these can be noticed and answered. The Venus flytrap, for example, counts the number of times its hairs are touched before deciding to close. It does not close for every brush. It waits for a pattern, a clue. Then, it acts. That kind of decision requires sensing and memory, even if the memory lasts only seconds. Roots speak as well. They release chemicals into the soil, shaping the world around them. Some of these compounds attract helpful microbes, others warn away competing plants. Some even change the behavior of nearby roots, encouraging them to grow in a different direction. The soil becomes a place not just of growth but of conversation. This language of plants is subtle. It is not designed for us, but it exists. And the more we study it, the more we realize how much is happening beneath the surface. Forests, fields, gardens, even a simple potted herb on a windowsill, all of them are alive with signals, with messages passed leaf to leaf, root to root. So when you walk past a tree or brush against a leaf, remember that you are stepping into a world full of quiet speech. It is not silent. It is simply speaking in a tone too soft for most ears. But the message is there, floating in the air, resting in the soil, and humming through every stem. High in the mountains of the Andes, where the air is thin and the clouds hang low, something humble and extraordinary once took root. It was not grand or showy. It did not tower above the landscape or bloom with brilliant color. It was a tuber, rough-skinned and modest, a potato. At first glance, it may seem too plain to carry a story worth telling. But that small, starchy root would one day spread across the world, feeding empires, surviving hardship, and becoming one of the most important foods on Earth. The potato began as a wild plant, growing quietly in rocky soils where few crops could survive. It learned to thrive in cold nights, harsh winds, and unpredictable weather. Its leaves reached for the sun while its roots swelled in the dark, storing energy underground in the form of starch. That stored energy would become its gift. But not at first. For a long time, it was simply another wild plant, one of many. Then came people. People who noticed. People who watched which plants grew strongest, which roots tasted best, which varieties resisted frost. Over generations, the wild potato was shaped into something more useful, more reliable. It was cultivated, protected, and improved. Its bitter flavors were slowly bred away. Its size increased. And most importantly, it became a crop that could feed many from just a little. Potatoes grow underground, hidden from sight. They do not draw attention, but they are generous. A single plant can produce many tubers. They store well, resist spoilage, and offer more calories per acre than almost any other crop. When they made their way from South America to Europe in the 16th century, they began a quiet transformation. Fields once used for grain began growing potatoes. Families who had struggled to survive now had food that could carry them through winter. Cities grew, populations rose, all because of a plant that grew in silence beneath the soil. But the story is not just one of abundance, it is also one of fragility. In the 19th century, when a disease called potato blight spread through Europe, entire communities faced famine. In Ireland, where many relied almost entirely on the potato, the blight led to great hunger and loss. It was a reminder that even the most generous plants need care and diversity. A single variety grown too widely can become vulnerable. Even a quiet miracle can be pushed too far. Still, the potato endures. Today it grows in nearly every country. It becomes fries and chips, mash and stew. It is baked, boiled, roasted, and turned into soup. It can feed a single person or a crowded table. It grows in gardens, on farms, and sometimes in buckets on balconies. Its story is one of survival and sharing. So the next time you see a potato, think of the journey it has taken. From mountain slopes to dinner plates, from wild root to global staple, it did not conquer the world with color or bloom. It did it with calm, quiet usefulness. And in doing so, it became something remarkable. When the sun rises each morning, it does more than light the sky. It calls to the plants. Most turn their leaves toward the warmth, quietly adjusting their angle to catch the rays. But the sunflower does something more noticeable. It moves its whole face. From morning to evening, young sunflowers slowly follow the path of the sun across the sky. They turn east to west, tracking the light with a gentle daily rhythm. It is not fast, it is not sudden, but it is real, and it is a beautiful example of how plants quietly respond to the world around them. This movement is called heliotropism. It means turning toward the Sunday. In young sunflower plants, the motion is active. Their stems grow at different rates on each side depending on where the sun is. The side facing away from the light grows slightly longer, which causes the flower to tilt. As the day passes, the plant keeps adjusting, gently turning its head in an arc that follows the sun's journey. When night falls, it reorients itself back toward the east, ready to begin again at dawn. Why do they do this? Scientists believe it helps the young plants grow faster. By facing the sun, they gather more light, and more light means more energy through photosynthesis. This extra energy allows the plant to grow stronger and taller. And in the plant world, Height can mean a better chance at survival. Taller plants reach more light and have more space for their flowers to bloom and attract pollinators. As the sunflower matures, something changes. The stem stiffens and the movement slows. Eventually, the flower settles into a fixed position, often facing east. This eastward posture helps warm the flower more quickly in the morning, which in turn attracts more pollinators like bees. The warmth helps the flower open earlier and makes the pollen more accessible. Even at rest, the sunflower finds a way to turn light into opportunity. Beyond their movements, sunflowers are remarkable in other ways too. Their centers are filled with hundreds of tiny florets, arranged in spiral patterns that follow mathematical rules. Found in nature, these spirals are not just beautiful, they help pack as many seeds as possible into the space, making each flower head a masterpiece of quiet design. Each seed holds the memory of that movement, of the slow turning and the still warmth. Sunflower seeds feed birds and people. They grow into new plants. They become oil, snacks, or just a small surprise tucked into a garden bed. And all of them begin with that simple motion, a turn toward the Sunday. So, if you ever see a field of sunflowers, take a moment to notice which way they are facing. Imagine them turning through the day, not chasing the light but welcoming it. It is a soft, steady way of living. A reminder that even plants can follow the sky, that sometimes growth begins by turning your face toward the light and letting it guide you slowly through the hours. Beans do more than grow. They repair, they restore. They reach into the air and pull out something invisible, something many plants cannot use, and quietly give it to the soil. This is the gentle gift of legumes. From peas and lentils to chickpeas and clover, these plants do something remarkable. They fix nitrogen. They take a gas that floats freely in the atmosphere and help turn it into food, not just for themselves but for others too. Nitrogen is essential for life. It helps build proteins and DNA. Plants need it to grow leaves, stems, flowers, and seeds. But even though nitrogen makes up most of the air around us, it is not easy for plants to use. They cannot pull it from the sky on their own. Most have to find it in the soil, often in small amounts. This is where legumes change the story. The roots of legume plants form partnerships with special bacteria called rhizobia. These bacteria live inside small nodules on the roots, almost like tiny round homes. In exchange for a safe place to live and some sugar from the plant, the bacteria take nitrogen from the air in the soil and convert it into a form the plant can use. The process is called nitrogen fixation, and it happens quietly underground, without any sound or sign. But its effects reach far beyond the roots. As the legume grows, it uses the fixed nitrogen to feed itself. But some of it stays in the soil. When the plant finishes its life, or when its leaves fall and decay, that nitrogen is released. Other plants nearby benefit. The soil becomes richer, healthier, more welcoming. In this way, legumes act like quiet caretakers, enriching the ground and making life easier for those that come after. Farmers have known this for centuries, even if they did not always know the science behind it. They planted beans or clover in fields after a season of wheat or corn. These legumes helped restore the soil's strength. In gardens, they are sometimes mixed with other crops for the same reason. It is a kind of green generosity, a reminder that some plants give more than they take. Even animals and people benefit. Beans are full of protein, something most plants do not offer in large amounts. That protein comes in part from the nitrogen fixed by the bacteria in the roots. So every bite of lentil soup, every forkful of hummus, carries a little piece of that quiet underground exchange. It is easy to overlook. A patch of green leaves, a tangle of vines, But under the surface, something important is happening. A gift is being made, molecule by molecule, and it is not loud or flashy. It is steady, invisible. A plant and a bacterium working together to turn air into nourishment. A small act of kindness beneath the soil, shared with the world above. Wheat begins as a whisper, a slender blade of green in a wide field, swaying quietly in the breeze. At first it looks like grass, because it is. Wheat is a grass, one that has been shaped by human hands and human hunger over thousands of years. And though its beginnings are soft, its impact is immense. Wheat has fed kings and commoners, travelers and towns, generations and empires, all from a seed that grows in silence, with roots in ancient soil and leaves that reach toward the sky. It started long ago in a part of the world known as the Fertile Crescent, where the land curves in a wide arc across parts of modern-day Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Iran. Wild wheat grew there, scattered in patches. It dropped its seeds quickly, scattered by wind and animals. But over time, people began to notice certain plants. Some dropped fewer seeds. Some stayed upright longer. Some were easier to gather. Slowly, carefully, those were the ones saved. And over time, what was once wild became something new. A crop, a partner. Wheat grows in stages. It begins with a seed tucked into soil. It sprouts, sending down a root and lifting up a shoot. Leaves unfold, stems grow taller. As the days grow longer and warmer, the plant prepares to flower. In the center of the stem, a head begins to form. This head holds rows of tiny florets, each one capable of becoming a grain. As the plant ripens, the green gives way to gold. The field turns to a sea of warm color, each stalk heavy with promise. The grain itself is small and firm. Inside its shell are layers of nutrients, stored energy, and the building blocks of food. Ground into flour, it becomes dough. Baked, it becomes bread. And bread is more than food. It is culture. It is tradition. It is comfort and ceremony, sustenance and symbol. Every loaf begins with a field of wheat. Growing quietly in the Sunday, wheat is also a traveler. It has moved with people across the globe, adapting to different climates, evolving into different forms. There is hard wheat and soft wheat, red wheat and white wheat, spring wheat and winter wheat. Each has its own use, its own flavor, its own rhythm of growing, and yet they all come from the same ancient story, the same partnership between plant and person. To walk through a wheat field is to feel time stretch out around you. The rustling of the stalks, the crunch of dry earth, the rhythm of wind moving through the rows. It is not loud, not hurried, but it is full of life. Every grain that falls into the soil carries the memory of what came before, and every new crop continues that memory, growing upward with quiet strength. Wheat does not demand attention, but it has shaped the course of history. With sunlight, water, and patience, it becomes something that can feed the world. It is the grass that became bread, and the root of meals shared across every corner of the earth. If there is one formula that quietly holds the world together, it might be this one. Take sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. Add a little green pigment and time. What you get is sugar and oxygen. It is simple to write down, but nearly impossible to overstate. This is photosynthesis, the gentle alchemy at the heart of life on Earth. It happens in leaves, in grass, in seaweed, in moss. It happens billions of times every second, and yet it makes no noise. It asks for no praise. It simply turns light into life. Photosynthesis begins when light touches a leaf. The leaf does not shine or spark. It absorbs the light and lets it begin a chain of events deep within its cells. Water, drawn up from the roots, meets carbon dioxide pulled from the air. Chlorophyll, the green pigment that fills each chloroplast, captures the energy of sunlight and uses it to rearrange those invisible ingredients. The result is glucose, a simple sugar. It is energy the plant can use to grow, to heal, to bloom, and as a bonus it releases oxygen into the air. That oxygen fills your lungs when you breathe. It drifts through forests, across oceans, into the mouths of whales and the wings of birds. Every breath we take is connected to the quiet work of green things. They do not make speeches or write books or build monuments, but they do something even more essential. They feed the world, and they make the air that keeps it breathing. All of this is powered by a star 93 million miles away. The sun sends its light in waves, and plants catch it without ever moving. They do not chase or store the sunlight in boxes. They gather it with flat, open leaves. They turn it into sugar that can be stored in a root, a fruit, a stem. That sugar might end up in an apple, or a grain of rice, or a slice of bread. From there, it passes into animals, into people, into movement and warmth and thought. Photosynthesis is not just a process, it is a bridge. It connects the inanimate to the living. It links the sky to the soil. It turns sunlight into sweetness. Even in the coldest parts of the world, even at the bottom of oceans where strange forms of it still occur, the basic idea remains the same. Light becomes food, and food becomes life. It is hard to see with the naked eye, but if you walk through a forest or a garden, or even just look at a houseplant, you are surrounded by it. The leaves shimmer because they are working, quietly, steadily. They are doing the math of survival, turning light and air and water into something soft and green and alive. So much of the world depends on this silent chemistry, and yet it asks for so little, just a little space, a little light, and a bit of time. It does the rest, without rushing, without sound, just growing, just giving, just green. So, as your eyes grow heavier and your thoughts begin to wander, remember this: the world is held together, not just by gravity or machines or markets, but by the slow, steady work of green things. Leaves that catch the Sunday roots, that listen to the soil, tiny seeds that dream of becoming forests. They feed us quietly, endlessly, and without asking for much in return. May your sleep tonight be soft and still, like a meadow at dusk. And if this little journey brought you peace, a like or a gentle subscribe helps us keep growing this sleepy corner of the internet. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be full of roots and rainlight.